On today's episode of Word of Grace, we talk about one of the primary reasons why God created man. Realize that after the fall of man, the Bible tells us in the book of Genesis chapter 3, that God had come down in the cool of the day, and then when Adam and his wife Eve heard his voice, they hid themselves in the garden. This presupposes that firstly, they were familiar with God's voice. Why? Because when God created Adam, he placed him in the Garden of Eden. God had had several interactions with Adam before the fall. None of us can tell for certain how long Adam lived in the garden before the fall, but we know that it may have been some time, but we cannot put a specific figure on it because the Bible doesn't give us that information. But what we know for certain is that one of the primary reasons why God created man was for fellowship. God would come down, just spend time talking to man. Remember when God created the animals, it was Adam who actually named them. We have this information from the book of Genesis chapter 2, verse 19. It says, "And out of the ground the Lord God formed every beast of the field and every fowl of the air, and brought them unto Adam to see what he would call them. And whatsoever Adam called every living creature, that was the name thereof. And Adam gave names to all cattle, and to the fowl of the air, and to every beast of the field. But for Adam there was not found an helpmeet for him." So we are told that Adam literally named all the animals God had created. Adam was so much in sync with God that whatever name Adam gave to the animals, that was the name God had intended for the animals to be given, because Adam fellowshiped with God. That is how God had intended that after man would stay in fellowship with God, that man would be able to, God's wisdom would wrap on man, God's knowledge and his insight, every single thing will wrap on man. That there will be a direct flow from God to man. And that out of God's wisdom and God's abundant repertoire of knowledge, man would also use that to govern the earth. So then, one of the primary reasons God created man was mainly for fellowship. And then on that faithful day, in the cool of the day, God had come down after the fall of man. He had come down to fellowship. But on that day, it was no longer going to be possible as God had intended it. And Adam, they were used to his voice. Adam together with his wife Eve. That is why when they heard his voice, they hid themselves in the Garden of Eden. It was a very sad day for God. I'm certain of that. Because then, the once thriving relationship which existed between God and man had suddenly been cut short by sin. And then we all know the consequences that follow. But here we look at one of the primary reasons God created man, and that was for fellowship. In our next episodes, we will explore more into the reason for creating man. Firstly, we've looked at fellowship, and we'll explore more in depth into fellowship between God and man. Have a blessed day. Shalom.